All right, dude. Let's start with, can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Stuart O'Grady. I live in Adelaide. I am 46 years of age and I'm talking to Dave.
Stu, what's that behind you?
It's a bike, Dave. It's the Paris Roubaix ensemble. I have my little man cave and the bike and Paris Roubaix bike untouched. It's only obviously ridden that one day of racing with the jersey still unwashed and dirty in that frame, which is why it's out in the garage. But the rock got a special mention today. That's normally stashed in the house at the hallway. It's the only trophy I have on display in our home. So yeah, that's down there in the corner. Got a little outing over this weekend.
So a lot of people, they'll know you from Roubaix in your latter part of your career, where you were killing it on the road, but probably a fair number aren't aware that you're a trackie at heart, like Olympic champion trackie, and that's where you came from. So what is your first memory of Roubaix? Because it must have seemed pretty distant from the world you were doing.
Yeah, first memory, good question. I mean, especially down here in Adelaide, we certainly didn't have, there weren't English magazines at the time. My dad was obviously heavily into cycling. My uncle went to Tokyo in '64, Tees Pursuit. So, cycling went through the family. So my dad and his mates used to get sent, magazines sent over from, the Pat Yonkers' dad, Dutch magazines or any kind of cycling magazine. So, my first, I guess, memory is probably just seeing pictures of, cartoon character type pictures in old magazines and probably photos, from the race itself. But I guess the first actual visual was, I think it was the 86 edition in the rain and the mud. Someone brought that back from Europe on a video cassette. And I remember getting a copy and I was just the journey that kind of took you through, it was so far off from normal cycling, what we knew it, to see him racing through mud and cobbles and, the hell of the north. And it was just like this real dramatic movie. And I was just kind of captivated at the start. And I guess, never actually thought I'd ride it or race it, or definitely didn't think I'd win it. But, I was definitely captivated by the adventure of it.
And I mean, what do you think? I think that's exactly it, isn't it? What do you think it means to cycling then? Because I mean, that's what's strange this year. We don't have it. And you sort of suddenly realize kind of how important it is. You've got the Tour de France, which is obviously that global beacon, one of the biggest sporting events in the world as a stage racer. And then you've got Paris Roubaix, which almost sits next to it. They call it the Queen of the Classics. It's for many people, it's the only bike race they'll watch all year. And why do you think what is it that captivates people?
I think it's just that. It's that the challenge, it's the unknown, it's the fear of not the fear of crashing or the adventure, but you just don't know what you're going to get at the start line. It's not like a mountain stage where I hate climbing mountains, but I know I'm going to get to the finish. As long as I don't crash on a downhill trying to catch everyone back up, you're going to get from A to B. Whereas Paris Roubaix, Tour of Flanders, you're on the start line, your fingers crossed, trying to convince yourself that you're in good form and you're going to have a good day, but really you haven't got a clue. And 9 times out of 10, you'll end up punctured and broken in the gutter. But there's so much, I guess. It's the challenge. It's the challenge of making it to the velodrome. As you grow up as a kid, that's the Colosseum. And you see all these pictures of guys riding in covered in mud and bleeding and crying. And I guess as a competitive person, you kind of go, well, Jesus, I wonder if I can do that, And then once you race it, you either love it or you hate it. You definitely don't go back a second time if you hate it. But for those few that actually enjoy that kind of racing, it's an addiction. I mean, there were years where I did not want to be there physically, but mentally I wanted to be there, or, it's just, it's a modern battle as well, even as an athlete on the start line.
Yeah, it's strange you say Colosseum, because I was going to say, I've always thought of them, because they certainly weren't my speciality, but I love them. I love to hate them. They seem gladiatorial. It's like it's exactly that. You could go in, you're used to going to the Tour de France, where everyone talks it up as being so tough. Then you get there and stage race riders are so soft in comparison to one-day races, because the one-day races, they go in there. That's what I always found amazing about it. They go in there, as you said, on the start line. There's a lot of variables you're going to have to deal with to get to the finish line in that front group. It's not, you can't just do the day by day and limit losses and defend. It's a really tactical race.
There was no no manners. The Tour de France, you bump someone like, oh, I'm sorry, mate. We're doing some. Here's a gel if you're a bit tired. The classics are like, gloves are off, man. Like, we are UFC in the cage, and I'm going to take you out. It's like bare knuckle fighting, and I guess the pushing and shoving, fighting into the cobbles. I got a big kick out of that. A lot of my track skills we use then. The speed of being able to jump around and positioning yourself, and just slide, being at one with your bike over the cobbles. Letting it slide, drifting on the verge of crashing, many times crashing. But it was just an adventure. It was just the best day. You just didn't know what was going to happen.
Tell us about your Roubaix. I remember I was at Tour of Georgia, and it was really surreal. I was watching on some crappy internet in a hotel in the morning, first thing in the morning, and it was surreal watching you race that day, because it was one of those, as you said, you don't know what's going to happen on the start line, but then everything just seemed to just fall into place for you on that day. Did it feel like that from the moment you're on the start line?
It did. I've got to say it did. Now, especially, it's easy obviously looking back, but there was a weird kind of confidence which I kept to myself, and I definitely felt it, but I didn't want to let it on in case it was false. I'd been in the top 10 for every single race in Belgium to the lead up to Roubaix. So I knew personally I was at a level which I hadn't been before. Every press conference, all the journalists were just chasing my roommate and best mate at the time, Cancellara. So I was kind of feeding off his, the Fabian ego, I guess the buzz of rooming with him and seeing how he prepares and what his mental strategy was, but then quietly confident in myself, going, well, I was his roommate and team leader as well. So I was there to help Fabian win, but inside I knew that I'd done everything I could possibly do, which was to get on the start line, be 100% fit, 100% healthy, and it was bloody 27 degrees, the hottest day in French history for that time of the year. So, Fabian, as soon as I remember Scott Sutherland coming in and saying, guys, it's going to be 27 tomorrow, and I was like, yeah, and Fabian was just like, fuck, he definitely didn't like the heat. So straight away, oh God, shit, I can't look happy here because he's sitting right next to me. But, deep down, I'm like, mate, that, 27, that's like a summer night in Adelaide. All the things kind of, you're like, well, okay, that's going to suit me. So things just kind of did start falling into place. And then obviously, jumping in the breakaway, having 2 teammates in the breakaway, group of 30 riders, didn't have to even go near the front. Got towed the whole way to the cobbles. Everything just went perfectly until I punctured in the forest. And, there I was sitting second wheel, just not even, hadn't even got into second gear, to be honest. And what are we, 160K in? Just this confidence, man. Honestly, my legs weren't hurting, nothing. Normally you get there and you're already starting to feel a bit buckled. And I was just floating, and then bang, puncture. Just rip the guts out of you. Every other year I would have got a spare wheel and time trialed back to the group, and then got dropped 30, 40K later because of that effort. This year I went, okay, and this was the experience, I guess, of riding 14 or whatever it was of them. I just sat up and, the soigneurs were waiting at the end of the forest. I grabbed a full musette, ate the whole musette. When do you get the chance to actually a whole musette full of food. Never. Again, looking back, all these little things helped to get to Roubaix. It was a crazy day.
So tell us, break it down for people. Because I mean, you know, you say the forest, and I've only done Roubaix. I've only finished it once. I only did it a couple of times, and no one can quite comprehend kind of how gnarly it gets. And you know, because it's not cobblestones like people know it. I always say it's like there's sections, and I describe it as Arenberg, where it's like somebody's had a wheelbarrow of bricks and just poured them on the floor, you know, and it's just insane. And what did you know from that first section and going through the forest, even though you had the puncture, that it was going to be go time?
No, the puncture threw a real wobbly in for me. To be honest, I thought that was it. I thought that was my personal opportunity. I thought that was gone. And I guess saying that, I'm thinking just to be there in the final. You know, I wasn't thinking about winning the race myself.
Yeah.
Our eggs were still in the Fabian basket. I mean, he was just cruising around with Boone, and our job, you know, Lars Mikkelsen, Matty Breschel, I mean, we had a cracker team. Luke Roberts, myself, were all out in the front. I think we were 4 CSC riders after the forest, you know, and Fabian coming across. You know, you're still kind of thinking it for Fabian. And, you know, I guess once they caught us and they started accelerating, I knew straight away that when Boonen and his guys, literally as they caught us, you know, they all attacked on the next section, and I just jumped on the wheel and hung on. I didn't even flinch. Like, I didn't even, and I started actually going back around riders. And it was like a trigger went off that, man, I haven't actually gone in the red yet. You know, I've just been like on semi under time trial mode all day. I haven't actually dipped into the red yet. So for me to once I saw those guys attack and just being able to kind of hop around guys, and all of a sudden this other wave of confidence came back over me. And then I really started looking at the guys' faces and realised that these guys were shattered, man. Like, you know, they had salt marks all over their jerseys. They were really hurting. And then, you know, saw Fabian and said, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "No, I'm not good." But anyway, we kind of soldiered on, and then, you know, came over the radio that I had to attack with Fabian on the wheel for one last chance. And as I attacked on the section, we hit a 90-degree corner, and I wiped out and crashed, which, you know, never do that. Like, I never, ever, you know, it was just a stupid mistake. But that mistake stopped me from going all in. Then I got back up, got back in, and I was so angry I got back to the front again, and I still hadn't gone into the red. And I said, "Fabian, do you want to go again?" And he's like, "No, mate, you go if you can." And you know, kind of away we went.
Man, that's insane. So we're basically the only race where you can have a puncture and a crash and it actually saves your race. That's what's so crazy about it. So how many Ks was that to go when you went?
Well, Roger Hammond and Stefan Vestman attacked, and I jumped on their wheel, and then they took me back across to the front group where I'd been earlier. But I mean, you know, you didn't really know where everybody was. It was so much dust and dirt, and you know, we caught up to the group, and literally as soon as I got on the back of that group, we caught the 2 guys which had been out the front. I can't remember who it was, and you know, killer instinct just go. Like, I didn't even hesitate, you know. So literally as we're riding up to them, you know, they're all stopping and having a drink and kind of reassessing, and you know, I just went for it. It was one of those moments.
And then I suppose that was when I was watching it in Tour of Georgia. It's every cyclist, they'd lie if they didn't say they'd dream being off the front of Roubaix on their own, riding towards that velodrome, you know, because it's just, those are the most iconic images in cycling. Especially, it's either has to be completely muddy or in those dust clouds. And that day you had the dust clouds. And I remember we spoke afterward, and you said, because you looked good, but you said there was one moment, like 15 Ks to go, where you got out the saddle on that false flat, and you were like, "Oh shit, it's getting to me now." What was it like those last 15, 20 Ks?
Yeah, when I attacked, I actually had no idea how far it was to go. It was just a big blur. And then I took off, and there was a 25K to go sign, and I saw it as I'm out the seat, and I went, "What am I doing?" You know. And next minute I turned left, I was on a cobble section. I didn't even know it was a cobble section, and then it was just pure killer instinct. And I guess I was committed then. I'm like, well, that's it. I kind of went off, and it's not until I watched the race later that I realised how close the group were for so long. I'm really glad we didn't have great communications, and I just didn't look around because that probably would have cracked me. But it hovered at like 30 to 40 seconds for a long time, and I knew I had to do something to change that. So, I thought I'm going to try something a little bit different. I just couldn't I remember being on 43, 44 seconds for what seemed like an eternity. And in my mind, that wasn't big enough to have a mechanical and still win. So I, obviously come up with another strategy, was to go, 80, 85% on the cobbles. When I knew that the guys behind would be going 100%, attacking each other. But then as soon as we hit the tarmac, was actually to give it some more gas and actually go 100%. Again, that's just experience, knowing that the guys are going to go full gas on the cobbles, and then, as soon as they hit the tarmac, they grab their bottle, have a drink, look around, and, that's when I wanted to be going 100%, and managed to get it to a minute. And I knew that, as you know, as any bike rider knows, getting that 1 minute on the chalkboard cracks the guys chasing mentally. So they start racing for second, and that was a massive moment for me to get it to a minute. And then I knew I could, I was saying to myself, if I have a puncture, man, I'm just going to fall and cry and retire. I'm never going to ride a bike again. But yeah, I knew that if it went well, I could still get a wheel and hopefully stay up the front.
And I suppose the big question is, what's it like going into the velodrome when you know you've got it won? Do you allow yourself to be emotional, or are you just still so zoned out?
Oh, there's so much going on. I think, as we kind of crested, there's that small climb, 3 to 3K to go, from 4 to 3K to go. And, it doesn't look like anything. It wouldn't even get a sweat up on a weekend ride. But after 260K, it felt like, the Tourmalet. So I knew once I got to the top of that, the legs are on the verge of cramping. Every muscle in your body's on the verge of cramping. You can only go as hard as you can go. And I knew once I got over the top of that little crest that I was going to win. So I guess coming into the velodrome was just all those memories of seeing the greats kind of come in, and it had been such a big part of my life. Every December 1st when I started training in Adelaide, if anyone asked me what I was training for Paris Roubaix. I was training for the classics. Not really ever knowing if I was going to win it, but that was my little dream. And Anne-Marie, my wife, was in the velodrome with Seth. They'd both never been to the classics before, so knowing they were in the velodrome. Just all these little things. Just you talk about it, the stars aligning. And I guess the emotion of relief, just not having to worry about sprinting against anyone. I think I would have had that covered with my track knowledge, but, we've seen faster guys beaten in those velodromes. It's like quicksand trying to sprint on that. So to be able to come in and actually enjoy it, bloody hell, still gives me goosebumps 13 years later.
Can you give us a little tour around your garage so people can see some of your bikes?
Yeah, we can try that.
So people get a bit of perspective on your career.
Yeah, I've got the first ever track, Cervelo track bike up there. I made them give me one of them. Obviously got the Roubaix Cervelo. Come around here. I don't know how well you can see.
You can see fine, yeah.
2004 Olympic Games gold medal track bike from the Madison. 2003 Australian Championship bike there, the look. Got the bike there from winning the Tour de France with Carlos Sastre, 2008. This one here didn't do much at all, really. Just had the green jersey for a day. The Tour with Cofidis, so it's only done one stage, that bad boy.
Huh.
A couple of other bikes. Got quite a few at our cafe restaurant in Adelaide as well. So we've got about another four of my Paris Roubaix bikes there.
Amazing.
Got Cancellara's 2013 Paris Roubaix bike that he won on, and Jens Voigt's the bike he raced on for his last year in there. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, thanks, Stewie. I mean, I guess if you were out of your career, where do you rank Roubaix? Is it the biggest?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's I can't really compare it against the Olympics. For me, as a young kid riding around Adelaide, my number one goal was to represent Australia at the Olympics. And you know, as you kind of go to one, you obviously want to win a gold medal. So that was on my like burning desire. You know, I hadn't heard of Paris Roubaix as a kid. It wasn't something that I knew much about. But obviously, as your career goes on, you know, riding the track and 50k around an Olympic velodrome or 270 on a Paris Roubaix, different sports. So, you know, put them neck and neck.
All right, brilliant. Thanks for your time, Stu. That was
no
awesome.
worries.
All right, mate.
All right, thanks, guys.
Let's stop there. I'm going to take this off now.